Windsor Castle always felt like a stage, but this time the tension wasn't scripted. It started subtly, like most royal storms do. On the outside, it was a picture-perfect family gathering, fresh-cut lawns, silver tea trays, and polished shoes tapping against centuries-old floors. But beneath the surface, a quiet power struggle was unfolding. And right at the heart of it was Catherine, sharp-eyed, intuitive, and her daughter Charlotte unknowingly becoming the center of something bigger. Within Fossil Tower Dark, a sharp-eyed, unknowingly becoming the center of something bigger. Charlotte wasn't her usual self that day. No jokes, no bubbly chatter, just a quiet, tight-lipped girl trying to disappear into the wallpaper. Catherine noticed it instantly. She always did. Charlotte had been seated with the other royal kids in the side salon, expected to sip tea, smile, and behave like a little diplomat in training. Nothing about it felt off. Until later. Catherine spotted Charlotte wandering the hallway, alone. No tears, but her face gave everything away. Pale, stiff, wounded in a way only a mother would recognize, and when Catherine crouched down and asked what happened, Charlotte's answer hit like a shot to the chest. Granny Camilla said I was showing off, told me not to speak unless spoken to. That was the crack in the porcelain, small, but sharp. Catherine didn't storm out. She didn't make a scene. She just hugged her daughter, locked that moment in her mind, and let a quiet fire start to burn. The thing about Camilla was, she knew how to smile through shade. To most, her comments would sound casual, but Catherine had grown tired of the pattern. Tiny cuts hidden inside polite conversation. She'd ignored it before for the sake of peace. But this wasn't about her anymore. This was about her daughter. And once it becomes about your child, silence stops being noble. The second jab came later, in the drawing room. Charlotte reached for a second scone, and Camilla's voice floated over. Perhaps one is enough, darling. We don't want to appear greedy. The tone wasn't loud. The words weren't cruel. But Catherine saw it. The shrinking posture, the pink cheeks. Another layer chipped off her daughter's confidence, and Camilla knew exactly what she was doing. That night, Catherine held Charlotte close. No lectures, no pressure to explain, just space. Then, when the house had quieted and William asked if Charlotte was okay, Catherine finally let the truth out. Every word, every moment, every little stab dressed up as etiquette. And William, always the diplomat, didn't push back. His silence was agreement. It all could have stopped there. But the universe had other plans. The next family event rolled around, a dinner at Highgrove. Charles meant for it to be a relaxed night, a simple catch-up between generations, but relaxed is a luxury you lose when you've been pushed too far. Charlotte was just there to say hello before bedtime. That's it. But Camilla couldn't help herself. Are you sure you're not too tired to be here? The whole room heard it. And that's when Catherine broke the script. She sent Charlotte upstairs with the nanny, then turned to face Camilla directly. Calm, composed, but unmistakably done. Every word that followed wasn't loud, but it shook the foundation of the room. She's not too sensitive. She's a child, and she deserves to be spoken to with kindness. Camilla tried to backpedal, cloak it in jokes, shift the tone. But Catherine didn't blink. She laid it out. Months of quiet disrespect aimed at a little girl who'd done nothing but be herself. William backed her without hesitation. Charles stayed silent. Camilla had expected the usual royal dance. Smile, avoid, move on, but what she got was Catherine drawing a line that wouldn't be crossed. And just like that, the game changed. Charlotte would never again be made to feel small in her own family. Not on Catherine's watch. Balmoral was supposed to be peaceful. That was the myth. Scotland's air, the vast hills, the cool rivers. It gave the illusion of calm, but illusions don't hold up forever, especially when tension follows you through castle gates and across country borders. Everyone had arrived on staggered schedules. Charles was first, cheerful as ever, arms open, ready for family. William, Catherine, and the children rolled in next. Smiles, handshakes, polite nods, the royal routine in full swing. Camila showed up a day later, trailing her entourage like usual, wearing a look that said nothing and everything all at once. Catherine had told William plainly, Charlotte would not be left alone, not even for 5 minutes. And for the first few days, everything held. The family smiled through long breakfasts, hiked the muddy trails, posed for the photographers outside the gates, and played their parts in the monarchy's favorite summer tradition. Charlotte even started to bounce back. She helped bake scones in the kitchen, giggled through horseback rides, and once again had that spark in her eyes. But calm never lasts when one side hasn't learned the lesson. It was mid-morning when Catherine was caught up in a conversation with Lady Sarah and two aides in the drawing room. William was off with Charles, fishing down by the river. The kids had been outside playing under the watch of two staff members. That was the plan, safe, supervised. Then came the sentence that made Catherine's stomach drop. Believe Princess Charlotte is in the sunroom with Her Majesty. The air changed. Catherine didn't show it, but something inside her turned cold. She didn't rush, she didn't panic. She simply excused herself, straightened her coat, and made her way across the hallway toward the sunroom. As she neared, she heard voices. Camilla's first. "We don't always need to speak over others, Charlotte. It's important to listen. Sometimes your mummy forgets that too." Charlotte didn't respond. But Catherine did. She opened the door with perfect poise. Camilla turned, pretending surprise. "There you are," Catherine said with a soft but purposeful smile. "I was looking for you, darling." Charlotte stood up quickly and walked straight to her mother's side. She didn't say anything, but her small hand gripped Catherine's tightly. Camilla didn't drop the act. "I was just having a word." "I heard," Catherine replied, her tone still cool, her eyes never leaving Camilla's. There was a long pause. She was only being a child," Catherine interrupted, calm but cutting. "And she doesn't need to be corrected for that every time she speaks." Camilla raised a brow, the way she always did when she wanted to appear unbothered but wasn't. "I've raised children. I know when a girl's growing too fast for her own good." "She's growing up just fine," Catherine said, "and she'll do so without being made to feel like a nuisance." The room went still. No raised voices, no dramatic gestures. Just two women standing in a sunroom, and one of them finally deciding she'd had enough. Catherine turned to Charlotte. "Let's go." In the hallway, she knelt beside her daughter. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. Charlotte gave a tiny nod, trying to hold back the tears. "You never have to be afraid of speaking up," Catherine said. "Not to anyone." And just like that, the boundary deepened. By the end of the week, people began to notice. Camila sat farther away during meals. Her voice didn't hover over the children's table anymore. She no longer commented on Charlotte's behavior or offered her unsolicited wisdom. It was subtle, the kind of shift that only palace staff and seasoned royals could detect. But it was real. Catherine had drawn a line. Not with drama, not with threats, with presence. And presence, when it comes from a mother who's done staying silent, changes everything. Summer ended with polite waves and picture-perfect smiles, but the palace had changed. The school recital at Lamrook was coming up, and Catherine made her decision quietly. Invitations went out to immediate family, William, George, and a select few staff who had earned Charlotte's trust. Camila was not included. The palace offered a clean excuse, scheduling conflicts, but those who understood the inner dynamics knew it wasn't about schedules. It was about space. Space Catherine was claiming on behalf of her daughter. That evening, as Charlotte rehearsed her piece at the cottage piano, Catherine sat nearby, not correcting or coaching, just listening. She wanted her daughter to feel seen, not polished, not perfect, just enough. Upstairs, William had been reviewing his upcoming travel itinerary, but he paused when he heard the soft notes of Charlotte's playing echo up through the old beams. He joined them in the living room a few minutes later, watching quietly from the doorway. It wasn't about music. It was about restoring something that had been chipped away, a sense of ease, of safety. Camila hadn't said much since Balmoral. She played her part in public, kept her distance, smiled when expected. But there was a shift. She no longer brushed off Charlotte's presence. She didn't interrupt, didn't tease, whether it was reflection, guilt, or simply realizing she could no longer get away with it. Something had changed. Charles noticed it too. He loved Camila, but he also knew Catherine, and he knew when a line had been drawn that wouldn't fade with time. At a later garden party, as the children played croquet under the late September sun, Charles caught Catherine alone for a moment near the fountain. "She's strong," he said, meaning Charlotte. "She is," Catherine replied, her gaze following her daughter across the lawn. Charles took a breath. "And she has you." Catherine turned to him. "That's all she needs." It wasn't a dig. It wasn't cold. It was a quiet truth, and Charles respected it. From that point on, even in rooms filled with centuries of expectation and history, Charlotte stood taller. She didn't withdraw. She didn't wait to be spoken to. She spoke. She asked questions. She laughed louder. The family noticed. At one formal dinner, when the children were allowed to attend dessert, Charlotte cracked a joke that made Charles laugh out loud. Even Camilla gave a polite chuckle, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Later, William leaned over to Catherine and whispered, "She's back." Catherine smiled but didn't respond. She didn't need to. This wasn't just about protecting one little girl from sharp comments. It was about setting a standard, about shifting the balance in a family that often expected silence in the name of protocol. Catherine hadn't demanded a public reckoning. She hadn't leaked anything. She had simply protected her child, and in doing so reminded everyone that behind every title, every duty, every curated image, there are real people with hearts that bruise. Camila didn't apologize. She never would, but she adjusted. In royal terms, that was its own kind of surrender. Weeks later, during a visit to a children's hospital, Charlotte walked confidently beside her mother, greeting staff, chatting with young patients, smiling as cameras flashed. She wasn't hiding anymore. Catherine held back, letting her daughter lead. And when a reporter later asked Catherine what she was most proud of in her daughter, she answered simply, her kindness. And her voice. The palace remained the palace, tight-lipped, polished, bound by rules, but